Hello friends. On June 16, 2026, a Tuesday, SpaceX made a stunning announcement. It would buy Anysphere, the company behind an AI code editor called Cursor, for $60 billion in stock. That is the largest acquisition of a venture-backed startup in history. To put it simply, SpaceX paid more for this software tool than most countries spend on their entire defense budgets in a year. And this deal came just 4 days after SpaceX's own record-breaking NASDAQ IPO. So the obvious question is, what exactly is Cursor? How does it actually work under the hood? And why did SpaceX decide it was worth $60 billion? Let's find out. Alright, so what actually is Cursor? It is not a plugin you install on top of another editor. It is a full standalone code editor, what developers call an IDE, forked directly from Visual Studio Code. That means it looks and feels familiar if you have used VS Code before, but AI is woven into every single layer of the editing experience, not bolted on as an afterthought. It was built by 4 MIT graduates, Michael Truel, Suwala Asif, Aman Sanger, and Arvid Lunamark, who incorporated their company Anysphere in 2022. Their core insight was simple, but powerful. They believed the future of coding was not just smarter autocomplete. It was an editor that understands your entire project the way a senior colleague would. And that brings us to the most important technical question. How does Cursor actually understand your code? Here is the interesting part. Cursor's real superpower is code-based indexing. When you open a project, Cursor automatically breaks every file into meaningful chunks, individual functions, classes, and logical blocks. Each chunk is then converted into something called an embedding, a list of numbers that captures the chunk's meaning mathematically. All of those embeddings get stored in a vector database. Now, when you ask a question or request an edit, Cursor converts your prompt into an embedding too, then runs a nearest neighbor search to find the chunks of your code that are most semantically similar to what you asked. Only those relevant chunks get sent to the AI model as context. This is a massive advantage over tools that only see your currently open file. Cursor can reason about cross-file dependencies across hundreds of thousands of files in the same repo. That context is what powers everything else we are about to cover. Now, Cursor does not lock you into one AI model. It is model agnostic by design. As of June 2026, you can choose from a menu that includes Anthropic's Claude Opus 4.8, OpenAI's GPT-5.3 Codex, Google's Gemini 3.1 Pro, xAI's Grok 4.3, and Cursor's own in-house model called Composer 2.5. You can even switch models mid-session depending on the task. Composer 2.5 is especially interesting because Cursor built and trained it themselves. In April 2026, Cursor announced it had begun training Composer models on xAI's Colossus supercomputing infrastructure, the same cluster that SpaceX uses for its Grok models. Cursor CEO Michael Truel described this as a key step toward building more capable coding models. That computing partnership, as we will see shortly, became a major part of why SpaceX moved to acquire Cursor entirely. First though, let's look at how you actually interact with the tool day to day. Cursor gives you 3 distinct interaction modes, and each one is designed for a different scale of task. First is Tab. This is always-on real-time autocomplete, powered by Cursor's in-house Fusion model. It predicts your next line or block of code instantly, with very low latency, because it uses a small specialized model rather than a heavyweight frontier one. Second is Composer and Chat. Here you describe a change in plain English, something like, add input validation to the login route, and Cursor modifies every relevant file simultaneously. You then review a diff, a side-by-side comparison of the changes, before accepting anything. Third is Agent Mode. This is where things get genuinely impressive. The agent writes code, runs your tests, reads any error messages, then revises the code on its own, looping until the task is complete, all without you approving every individual step. Think of it as a junior developer who can actually run the code themselves. So why did SpaceX value Cursor at $60 billion? 2 reasons: traction and strategy. On traction, Cursor went from $100 million in annualized revenue in January 2025 to $1 billion by November, $2 billion by February 2026, and roughly $4 billion by early June 2026. That growth rate is almost unprecedented in enterprise software. There are also over 500,000 paid developers using it. On strategy, SpaceX, which absorbed xAI in February 2026, wanted a dominant position in AI coding to rival OpenAI and Anthropic. Cursor and xAI had already been jointly training a new frontier coding model on the Colossus supercomputing cluster for months before the deal was announced. Acquiring Cursor gives SpaceX not just the revenue, but the distribution, the daily developer sessions, and the real-world coding data needed to train the next generation of AI models. Now let's bring it all together. Alright, let's pull this all together. Cursor is a full AI-native IDE, forked from VS Code, built by 4 MIT graduates at Anysphere. Its engine is code-based indexing using embeddings, which gives the AI real understanding of your whole project. You get 3 interaction modes: Tab for instant autocomplete, Composer for natural language multi-file edits, and Agent mode for fully autonomous coding loops. You pick from frontier models including Claude Opus 4.8, GPT-5.3 Codex, Gemini 3.1 Pro, Grok 4.3, or Cursor's own Composer 2.5. And on June 16, 2026, SpaceX announced it was buying all of this for $60 billion, with a jointly trained model already running on the Colossus cluster and a GitHub rival called Origin reportedly on the way. The key takeaway: the code editor is no longer just a tool. It is strategic infrastructure. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.